Well, hello. Welcome to Hobby Hotline, episode 328. I'm Danny Black. I'm going to have some friends maybe joining me soon. We might take an abbreviated episode today as everybody gets back from the holidays, right back into a holiday weekend. So, a lot of people traveling this weekend. Mad City Brew, we are definitely going to talk about Uke today. What's up, TJ? Um, yeah, sad to see Bob Uecker gone. Yeah, Ruben, we're doing the turnaround. Might be a short one this morning, but good to see you, buddy. What's going on, Steven? So yeah, Euchre. I mean, what do you say about him? He was the ambassador of goodwill for baseball. Um, what's going on, everybody? And let me also definitely say hello to the sports card shop and get their banner going. Rex and the whole family over there doing it again. Yeah, Warren, this might be a real quick one this morning. Hate to do that to you guys, but we'll see. Solo on the flip turn here. What's going on, Orlando? How are you? Warren, yeah, good to see Warren in the room. Foul ball, good morning. If anybody wants to jump in on this NFL weekend, it is an NFL weekend. We got Commanders, Eagles, Chiefs, and Texans. And if the Texans can pull it out, then just saying they come to Baltimore. Baltimore beats Buffalo. They're hosting a home conference championship game. Yeah, like a drifter, I was born to walk alone. I'm telling you. What's going on? All right, so let's tell some euchre stories real quick. Some funny ones, hopefully. What's going on, Larry? Euchre said that the best contract he ever had. He said he had a fantastic contract with a uniform and equipment company. They paid him very good money to never wear their products. Some of these, if you were watching last night, you heard on Card Menches. Um, but I just think they're hysterical. Euchre, who couldn't catch Phil Necro's knuckleball, said he learned the secret: just let it stop rolling and pick it up. Um, he was great. He called most Brewer games straight as an arrow, and where he was his best was the blowouts. When it's 6-0 in the seventh on a Wednesday in July, that's when you got euchre stories. He got a player's share. I learned that when they would win in the playoffs or when they went to the World Series. So I just think that's really, really cool, and it said a lot about him. I showed his rookie card last night. It's a five-player card, and he doesn't look great in the picture. I'm sorry, you couldn't have been happy with that piece either. Um, he looks like he's 50 years old in his rookie card. His second year card, where he's by himself, he looks much better. He was a treasure, thank goodness. Um, I think we might have Chris jumping on here for a minute. Um, the other big story, and got to talk about this: Sasaki to LA. What do we think about that? Dodgers again? I mean, is it over and done? Do they get whoever they want? And what's that going to do to cards? Yeah, right. I can do my Larry King. Chris, Little Rock, go. Um, what do you guys think about Sasaki going to the Dodgers? Uh, they go with a 6-man rotation. Bring Kershaw back at some point. Warren, I think baseball needs to fix. It's a tough situation, and most people don't realize, and maybe this is the answer. He's averaged about 100 innings a season. All teams can do this. They could. They don't. The Dodgers just seem to win over and over. They seem to have a great recruiting team there. Ruben says, I'm disappointed the Dodgers got him. Wanted to see him go to San Diego and make the Dodgers earn a repeat. I'll be honest, I would have loved to see him go to San Diego. Absolutely. What's up, fellas? And TJ says, meh, it's the Dodgers. They're the Yankees of MLB, but with a better GM. That's probably accurate. I could see that. Let's see if we have somebody calling in. Chris, are you here on audio only?
I'm here on audio only. I'm actually driving in my car right now.
I feel like I'm hosting in a call-in
John
show.
Newman reached out to me this week. Yeah. Well, Newman reached out to me this week saying that we're having some issues with possible co-hosts, that if I can maybe call in and kill a few minutes. So
No, I appreciate you, buddy. You drive safely. What's going on in your mind? What do you think of Series 1?
I think what Topps is going. I think what everybody's talking about are the parallels, right? They got rid of the hobby only black one, and there's a lot of complaining about that. I think if you look at the parallel structure, they're really trying to conform Topps's parallels with all the other brands of Topps parallels, like Chrome, Bowman Draft, Finest. You have the one of one parallel. Then the next level up is the red parallel, which is numbered to 5. Then you have orange to 25. You know I think everybody knows the standard Topps rainbow by now. And for the longest time, the Topps flagship kind of had its own thing, where you had like the Father's Day to 25 and the Mother's Day to 25. And they've kind of removed those and installed the Topps standard rainbow. Another thing that they're doing, speaking of that rainbow, is there's going to be separate hobby parallels and separate retail parallels. So there's going to be a hobby only 1 to 5 and a retail only numbered to 5. And the same thing with the orange to 25, separate ones. Same thing with the gold to 50, green to 99. And do we really need this many parallels that are numbered to the same thing? I mean, this is something that I wrote about last year in Hobby News Daily, about just the sheer number of parallels in these products now. And at the end of the day, I don't think many collectors are going to want these cards in the long run.
No, they devalue themselves.
Yeah. I think there's there's the psychology of pulling a low numbered card, but if you're just pulling like a gold parallel numbered to 50 of some left-handed 1-inning relief pitcher or a backup catcher, you're never going to get rid of that card. I'm sorry. You don't want that card. So
a lot of truth to that. All right, well, I got Orlando who's jumping on screen with me, so I'll let you drive, Chris.
All righty.
Thanks. I
I'll
appreciate
be
you jumping
listening.
in. Thank
All right.
you. See
Thank
ya.
you.
And as always, making the rest of us look bad in our backgrounds, the man Orlando. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, Daddy? I couldn't leave you alone there, stranded here on the show.
Dude, I'm like Gilligan.
Yeah,
You know, I just go to the island, do my 3 hour tour. How are
yeah.
you? How are you?
Doing great. Just over at my mom's house here. I'm going to take her to lunch in a little while and listening to the show. I figured, you know what? I'll just hop on a little while, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how long I'm going to go today after last night's show. You know, these double headers, the nighttime flip over. Um, I'm getting too old for this, Orlando.
Yeah. Well, next time, just text me, let me know, and I'll join you.
Absolutely. Um, what's up? Yes, Stephen with the PH.
Hey,
Hi,
Steven.
Craig. Uh, so real quick, are you a Montgomery Club person?
No, I'm not.
I'm not. I'm curious because somebody asked, TJ asked about the future of the Montgomery Club, and I'm curious for people who have been members. I've heard a lot of people talking about it going downhill in the quality of what people are getting for their membership money now. Um, so if you want to put that in the chat, but
Yeah.
let's
I
talk
used to
about
I used to
Sasaki.
be a member
Yeah,
of the I used to be a member of the Stadium Club back in the day. That was kind of what they called it back then. And it was pretty good because they would send you a lot of stuff, and it was pretty limited. But I think the Montgomery Club has gotten so big now that it's just a lot of stuff. But it the quality of what they send you now is not what they would send you like 2 3 years ago. And I know
yeah,
Mangini is a member of the club, and he always shares what he gets.
yeah, and it's not the same as it was. That's what I've heard people say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ruben says, "Man, the Orlando set beats everyone's. It does." He's actually in Iowa, guys. It's a fake background.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, no foul ball. It was actually a Card Mentions episode every other Friday night. Um, it was not a hobby hotline. That's every Saturday morning on Bench Clear. So, what have you picked up recently, Orlando? Where are you shopping these days? I know I talked last night about what I'm looking for.
Well, I'm actually saving up money for Strongsville. I haven't
Yeah,
really bought anything, just some minor things here and there, but really I'm holding up because my goals right now are really to kind of save up and really concentrate on some more bigger cards versus a lot of smaller cards. Like Mike Petty says, I want some of the meat for the burrito,
yep.
not condiments. So I got plenty of condiments, and I'm
Well,
looking to pick up some bigger cards. I'm getting a few cards graded. I got my Bob Uecker graded last year, and it came out a 7.5, and I was like, wow, I was
that's a tough
super.
card to actually center well.
It's a high number with
Yep.
the tough wood border, but things like that are I'm thinking about even possibly selling it now when the thing is hot to to get a big card at Strongsville. But really, that's my goal, to get a big pre-war card, hopefully a Walter Johnson or something like that.
Absolutely. Speak and you can bring it into existence. We have with us the one, the only, John Mangini.
There he is.
What's
I
We're
going
gonna
on,
couldn't
talk
leave
John? How
my
about
you
fellow
doing?
collectors all alone.
No, I hear
Never,
you're the
never leave
man
a
with the
collector
inside
behind.
word. I heard you're the man with the inside word on the Montgomery Club.
I don't have any inside word. I'm a member.
No, no, no inside word. You know what I mean. So I've heard it's really gone downhill. Would you?
I would agree. They don't really send anything anymore.
Well, that would be not a good thing.
Yeah, they used to send like four little sets a year, and you just get something unexpected. It was really nice, oftentimes with an autograph. I haven't gotten anything this year, other than the complete set.
Well, what is TJ says that they only gave one item in 2024, a special base set. Only one item. That's unbelievable. Only difference between the Montgomery and the regular sets was a special layer on the front, and they gave early access to product. That's gone way downhill.
Yeah, it's turned into more of an early access to product thing. And since I don't buy a lot of product, that's not why I joined. I joined for the special sets, which I really enjoy.
Yes. So what are you collecting and working on these days? What projects do you have?
I've been going after some bigger cards lately, and just working on little. I work on sets all the time. I have near sets from, I don't know, T206 on. I
I
work on
like
all
that,
kind of
near
different
sets.
sets. Yeah, and
Near
I always
sets.
pick up some of the rookies in the NFL, MLB. Um, I work on those a little bit too. I collect everything, man.
So what should Orlando do with his Bob Uecker? Should he sell it now?
Did I sell it now?
You could sell it and buy it right back in a month.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
it's a 7.5, so I figured I could get like almost $1,000 for that card already.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a seller, but with the way prices are, you're almost stupid not to. I mean, it's just ridiculous. If you saw what happened to the Ricky Henderson cards, and then like a month later, they're back to where they were.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem buying a 4 that's going to be nicely centered. That's going to look, just as good as my 7.5.
Yeah, there are a lot of people doing that,
Yeah.
selling
Yeah.
their nines and tens and downgrading one grade, and man, they're pocketing a lot of cash. You can buy other stuff you want.
Well,
Yeah.
does this also come down to there really is the card, not the number?
Well, I don't. I just did a video on this. I don't understand the gigantic difference between nines and tens or whatever. So a lot of collectors who don't really care about the number are selling their tens or their nines and picking up cards that they really want. My friend Rick, he has all these like PSA nines of common players in the '60s, and he's selling them for hundreds of dollars and buying Babe Ruths and stuff.
That's not a bad upgrade.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Because that Ruth kid, I think, is going to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
But I think
I'm not sure he'll stay a pitcher because he's such a good hitter.
Nobody can do both, John. That's not possible.
but I think definitely that's a good way to go. Get rid of a lot of those high grade cards because you can pick them up so cheaply for in grades 4 and 5.
I've been on such a run of buying living Hall of Famers in lower grades, better eye appeal, and been getting some unbelievable values and just building up the collection.
Yep.
I was talking last night. I don't know. Yeah, and John, I'm curious. Should I go for a bench rookie, a Brett rookie, or what was the third
Yaz
one?
rookie
Oh,
was
the
the other
Yaz
one.
rookie. Yeah, the Yaz rookie.
What do you think, John?
Well, I think surprisingly, I think the card that's most in demand out of those is the Brett rookie. Especially, it's hard to find them centered. The 75 set is susceptible to stuff. The bench rookie I have always found to be super undervalued my whole collecting life. I think that card should be worth way more. When you look at
That's
the difference between Nolan Ryan's rookie and card in the same set, it's unbelievable.
I
The
feel the
Yaz
same way
rookie
on
card
Yaz.
is
Yeah.
is awesome. Um, you can buy them anytime you want. There are a lot of cards where you can buy anytime you want, right? And so when I'm spending my hobby dollars, I think Orlando is the same way. I'm trying to find those cards I can't find every day. It's like when you want to talk about 52 Willie Mays, Bowman, the 52 Mickey Mantle tops, all these cards. It's like you can go on eBay at any day, at any time, and you could find at least 10 of them anytime you want to spend the money. But then there are all these cards that you could go on eBay for 6 months and not find one. And those are the cards that I try to pick up for the most part. And
But is that
sometimes they're
because
just
you
cards I always
already?
wanted.
Sorry, John. Is that because you already own a lot of the other cards?
Yeah, you know what? Probably yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, with all due respect, your collection's a little bit well known.
Well, the
You know,
thing is that if you go to card shows or anywhere, I mean, you see those 50s and 60s and 70s vintage cards everywhere.
Yeah.
So sometimes, after a while, after so many years of collecting, you get kind of tired of seeing those. And most of them, like John said, either I have them or I had them. And now you want to go after stuff that really you don't see very often.
Yeah, if you go to a card show or the National, it just blows my mind. I mean, you'll see one dealer who will have 27 1966 Mickey Mantles lined up there. You could choose. Um, and it's just more exciting at this point. I've seen these cards over and over all my life. And on YouTube, everybody shows them over and over, these Topps cards, because that's the most popular. So to me, it's exciting when I see a card I've never seen before. It's like I want to get that one.
that's one of the reasons I like Strongsville. I think Strongsville's got a little bit of this, of, I don't want to say more than the National, but it does hold its own for a smaller show of rarer stuff. I know there was things I found at Strongsville that I did not find at the National a couple years ago, and that could just be hit or miss depending on what dealers have at the time.
Right.
But I spout the love for Strongsville all the time. And if I'll tell everybody out there, if you haven't been, go.
Yeah, the good thing about Strongsville is just it's like 95% vintage and pre-war. So most of the big dealers, I mean, they're going to go there because they know that people like us are going to attend that show.
Right. It is for the super nerds.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about the future of vintage with younger collectors, modern collectors? Where do you think it's going?
Orlando, you want to take it?
Well, I mean, I'm seeing it now. A lot of collectors, are getting a lot of the modern collectors that were doing breaking and stuff. They're kind of getting out. A lot of them aren't even on eBay or doing very little on on YouTube anymore. So I think a lot of them are moving to vintage. I was even looking at a video yesterday. One of these, flippers, Mary Gamble. She was even getting a Mickey Mantle card. So
I
I'm
saw
looking at
that.
some of these people. I'm going, hey, they're moving down and seeing some of these cards that are going to be a lot more stable than the Justin Herberts that they've been picking up. So I do think that not everyone, but there's going to be a small percentage of these guys that are going to start getting into vintage eventually. And
I
then
was
pre-war comes next.
I was watching her video today. I enjoy her. I think she does a good job. I don't know why I enjoy her. I don't really need to see her put on her makeup or whatever, but other than that, I enjoy it. But I saw some little kid. I mean, some little kid shelling out $650 and buying a card from her. And I'm like, oh my God, how times have changed.
Yeah.
I used to scrounge up $7 to buy a dream card.
I do believe that vintage will always be where people who have curiosity in the hobby, and want to know where stuff came from and have an appreciation for the history of the sport, not just the cards. I think that'll keep vintage strong for forever. I think vintage was popular in the '80s, popular in the '90s, and it may go up and down a little bit, but the
But
history of the game can't be told without the vintage cards. Those players are the fabric of the baseball.
my question always is, do people care about the history like, my generation did? Because if you look at some of the greatest players to ever play the game, Rogers Hornsby, George Sisler, a lot of these guys, they, they just seem so undervalued. If you're bidding on auctions, like you can get them cheap, and these are some of the greatest players to ever play, and you even many of the Hall of Famers.
Yeah, I think part of it
players
is
like Trish Speaker, but it's kind of. I think it's a challenge to get these newer collectors to get into vintage. But I think once they get into vintage, they'll get into the history of it. I think initially The tough part is to get them to have interest in vintage first. But once you get in it, it's like the rabbit hole that you just can't get out. It's pre-war is the same thing. Once you get into that, you can't get out. It sucks you right in because there's so many different sets and different things that you can look at, not just the regular tops issues.
It always
For
fascinates me with vintage football because, sports fans are so into stats. It's like, baseball fans, they're guys they never saw play. And what do? They look at their stats to determine if they should be in the Hall of Fame or not. And in football, it's so impossible to compare modern players with vintage players because they've added so many games. There were eras of the 12-game season. Then shortly after, it was Jimmy Brown's third year, I think, where they went from a 12-game season to a 14-game season. And then, later on, they went to the 16-game season. Now we have a 17-game season. They changed all the passing rules to open up the pass.
that's the
So
yep.
when you look at the old players and you don't watch them on film, or your dad didn't teach you about how phenomenal they were when they played, and you just look at stats, well, all modern players, all modern quarterbacks, all modern wide receivers, have the top stats. And it really hurts the guys like Bart Starr and Johnny Unitas, and especially playing in the pre-Super Bowl era, right? They don't have Super Bowls. So it's like vintage football cards are just nothing. You could pick them up for nothing aside from a few big ones.
I mean, even the Unitas rookie, you're talking about the 57 set. You're talking about the greatest quarterback ever. I'm a huge fan of the 57 set, and I think it's tremendously undervalued. I'm from Baltimore. I'm 100% biased.
Yes.
So, but I do believe, and I've bought and sold a couple of them, that most people, even if you're a vintage baseball fan, you should have a Jim Brown. You should have, certain players. You should have a Wilt or a Kareem. And not that you have to have everybody in every sport, but I think most people who are vintage baseball fans also respect the greats in the other sports. And if your collection is stuff you like and tells the story of players you've watched growing up, include the other sports.
Yeah, I think that's why, there's always been a handful of football cards that always had tremendous value. The Jim Thorpe and the Red Grange and
Oh,
the
absolutely.
33 Sport King set. Of course, that's a multi-sport set maybe people worked on because there were baseball players in it. You had the Jim Brown rookie. You had the Bart Starr rookie, the Unitas rookie. You had the Joe Namath rookie, Walter Payton, like those kinds of cards. But beyond that, um, the value just isn't there.
Yeah, there's
Well,
very
that's
few actual football cards that are vintage or pre-war. I mean, there is the Bronco Nagurski, that's
Yep.
very expensive, but for the most part, I mean, you could pick up. I picked up a Newt Rockney for in great condition for $1,000, $2,000, and those, I mean, from that set, which is a tough set, and if you pick up like a Babe Ruth, like for example, from the 33 Gaudi in a five, you're talking a card that's going to be worth, $50,000. So it's funny how that football is worth, you know, maybe 20% of what baseball cards are worth
well. I
in
think
pre-war and vintage.
that's Ken Burns. I think he's responsible for that.
Yeah.
Um, I think they should play Ken Burns on the loop at the National, the baseball.
But a lot of it is what John says. It's the stats. I mean, if you look back in the days, Otto Graham was huge, and
Otto
now,
Graham was Tom Brady before Tom Brady. Went to 10 straight championships and won 6 of them.
yeah, now
I mean,
you ask
Y.A.
the
Tittle.
yeah, a
Y.A.
lot of
Tittle,
the
yeah.
new these new collectors, they have no idea who Otto Graham is, and it's just crazy.
Y.A. Tittle was like, my God. I mean, he changed like the game. Like he was so unique at the time. And then you look at the old Rams team too with Norm Van Brocklin,
Hmm.
Tom Fears, Crazy Legs Hirsch. Like that was the first, I think, great passing team. where they were mostly passing. It was cutting edge for that time period. But if you don't know history, you don't know those things.
Well,
Back,
but in football, also quarterbacks dominate so much. I think that
Yep.
carries into vintage also. For
It
some
always
reason, there's
blows my
very
mind how
yeah.
defensive players don't get any love whatsoever. A guy like T.J. Watt or, all these great Ray Lewis, Ed Reed. You're from Baltimore. I mean,
I was about to say, keep going, John, keep going.
yeah. I mean, I, as a Steeler fan, collect those guys. They were so good, you know?
Mean Joe Green, you couldn't have been any better than Mean Joe Green,
Yeah.
especially with the commercials and everything. And his rookie
Hey,
card is
Mean
nothing.
Joe Green, he invented the gap defense. You know,
I drank
the
I
second
drank
half
a
of his
glass
career.
bottle of Coke every week in honor of that commercial.
Yeah.
Even though I think it was Pepsi, but no, it was Coke. Real quick, I just want to get caught up on some comments here. Here you go, John. Terry Bradshaw, the original TB12. A little bit of love for Mean Joe Green, although he hates being called mean. If you ever see him, call him Joe Green. He's still bigger than you. TJ says it started recently. MVPs used to be non-quarterbacks. Yes, but the hobby love has been dominated by quarterbacks. That's what I was talking about. Sammy Ball, another great name. Slinging Sammy Ball.
John just released a video the other day of Gale Sayers, who I think is one of the most underrated running backs ever.
Absolutely.
Oh, you know what? Slinging Sammy Baugh, that's the one I was thinking about, who revolutionized the pass. I was misspeaking there.
Well, Unitas also. I mean, Unitas to Raymond Berry created the 2-minute drive, created the real out pattern where you catch it, right on the sideline, So I'm biased, like I said.
Well, look at Johnny Unitas when when he set the record with 47 straight games with a touchdown pass. At one time, that was considered to be like Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak because it was a different game, and that was unusual. 47 people thought would never be broken. When you look at Don Hudson's touchdown record, at one time that was considered to be like Babe Ruth's home run record. It was so insane. He caught a touchdown every fifth pass.
Yeah, that's
and he set rookie records. One of them wasn't broken until Jefferson just broke it a few years ago. That's how long it stood.
With all the rule changes.
Right, with all the rule changes and additional games. He never played in more than a 12-game season. He played in 11-game seasons, 10-game seasons, 9-game seasons.
Well, that's my whole thing on Unitas also. It took him more seasons to get to that touchdown mark.
Yes.
And it's harder to come back every offseason and come back for another season. I think in some ways it's easier to do it in less seasons. I don't know.
Well, you look at the Mel Blount rule. You look at what the Mel Blount rule did to receivers.
Yeah.
Lynn Swann and those guys playing in the 70s, they could get beat up the whole way down the field. That's what made Mel Blount so dominant. He was big, fast, and strong. And he just took away one half of the field. Once they changed that rule where you could just touch them for 5 yards and had to let them run free, then what happened? Steve Largent happened. Jerry Rice happened. Like a whole different game, right? You weren't allowed to beat that receiver up. What Gene Atkinson and what's his name from the Raiders? Atkinson and Tatum, what they did to Lynn Swann would be a crime today. They might get thrown in jail.
No, and
they certainly get banned from the league.
Look at the quarterbacks back then. I mean, they were hit. Johnny Unitas took a beating every game.
In the head.
Oh, he took his hands.
Well, he didn't take much of a beating though because he had the greatest offensive lineman to ever live, Mr. Parker. Parker was impossible to get around. Left tackle.
Tough guys back then, and even some quarterbacks that didn't get hit, like Fran Tarkenton. Man, he was one of the best running quarterbacks ever. And again, another quarterback that nobody talks about, Fran Tarkenton.
I want to go back for a second. Do you know how Mean Joe Green became mean?
No.
When he was young, he was small and he was bullied, and he used to get beat up and stuff. And like in high school, one year, he grew all of a sudden and got real big, and he always had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. So he went back and sought out everybody that beat him up and beat them up. He would like get them under the bleachers or whatever. So when he came into the league, he had like an attitude.
Oh, that's well. Here, then I'll throw this up. You can pick up Dick Nitrain Lane rookie cards for $2.
Yeah, there you go. Another all-time great.
Rex,
He's still what, third or fourth on the all-time interception list still.
yeah,
And the top guys are safeties. So he's really the top cornerback that just played corner. Because you have M. Tennell. M. Tennell was Deion Sanders before Deion Sanders.
and once again, look at the stats. Look at passes per interception and stuff like that. And that's really where some of these guys separate themselves because it was a different league and they dominated when there was less coming at them. Rex makes a great point here. Rules about hitting the quarterbacks, just as impactful as the wide receiver and cornerback rules. Probably true. I mean, you had to, when they say stand in there and take one, they meant stand in there and take one. It was none of this. You can't fall on the quarterback. Don't hit him too hard. Don't hit him too high. Don't hit him.
Yeah, there were
low.
different rules. I mean, you couldn't just throw away the ball back in the days like they did today and things like that.
Right.
I want to tell you something. Back during the Steel Curtain defense, and you go watch some of those games. It's hilarious. When they played Cincinnati, they knocked Kenny Anderson out of every single game they played. He couldn't last a game with those guys. They beat the hell out of him. But that was part of the game back then.
How about this guy? Speaking of tough, Ronnie Lott destroyed anyone over the middle, and also had part of his finger amputated so he could play in a game.
That's true. It's pinky.
One of the craziest stories. I tell it every time I hear his name. Gale Sayers underrated now, not when he played, but that speaks to how
Sayers
underrated
was insanely good.
Right. That speaks to how underrated he is because people who saw him. I think it's like Bo Jackson. No matter how good we talk about Bo Jackson, if you saw him play, you have a different respect for his athletic ability. You had to see him. And sometimes sports are like that. And, what we consider vintage today, are the 80s going to be considered vintage in 20 or 30 years? I mean, is that fair?
Well, the thing is, this is interesting because I was just thinking about it because somebody did a video, their top vintage cards, and they were from the 1990s.
Ooh.
And they were like, well, I don't care what you say is vintage. The 90s are vintage to me. So vintage can be different things to different people. The thing is, though, there were set parameters back in the day for what was vintage. It's like I can't call 1980 pre-war unless you want to talk about the Iraqi war. So the parameters were always up till including 1978 for vintage. And then a lot of people, they wanted the Ricky Henderson rookie card to be included in vintage. So they move it up on their own to 1980. And 1980 actually makes more sense to me than 1978 because that was the last year of just the Topps domination. And that makes perfect sense to me. But, the 1980s are now vintage, and 1990s are now vintage as far as eras are concerned. But, I don't know. Like it's up for the hobby to decide.
Because somebody who does the research, who's younger now and does research on players in the 80s, does research on players in the 90s. Isn't that what we were talking about at the beginning that we want vintage lovers to do? Is to learn the game before their time. So I just want to, keep the perspective for everybody in here. When you see people collecting 80s and 90s, look how old they are. Maybe cut a kid a break if he wants, a Wade Boggs rookie. That might not be the sexiest card for a lot of us, but that's a great player. And that might be a great rookie card for somebody who just learned about Tony Gwynn or, whoever.
And it's very vintage for a young person.
Exactly.
Maybe there needs to be a sliding scale like there is with cars. You can get classic plates once it hits 10 years old. You can get antique plates once it hits 20 years old. Maybe it needs to be a sliding scale.
Well, maybe we need a new name for the era. Somebody said it's like classic rock. Classic rock stays the 60s and 70s, kind of era. So
Yeah.
maybe we need a new name because I don't like junk wax. Junk
No, I
wax
hate junk wax.
I
is
hate that term.
it's
And let
yeah
me tell you something. With what some of these PSA 10s are selling for, it ain't junk anymore.
No.
yeah really. Um, Real quick, getting back to what we were talking about, I missed the Deacon Jones head slap. That was classic.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean that thing would give
what
a
a beast he
concussion.
was.
Yeah.
He could give a concussion with that. Yeah,
That whole line.
yeah.
The
Found
Pearson.
treasures. I was always told growing up, vintage is 20 years or older, and antique is 100 years or older. Those numbers seem to make sense. Sure. Um, what word do you mean in pre-war? That's a fair question, John. You want to answer that? I think
Well,
it's
the hobby has defined it as pre-World War II.
Right.
But you know there were lots of wars, so you you could that term. It's just a historical term that was always used to define anything before World War II.
once again, if we look at the history of production of cards, the vintage ending when Fleer and Dunruss came along is a natural line of demarcation. I think
Yes,
there's
for
also
me too.
something to be said for pre-war being right around the Bowman Topps iterations, and being before that. I look at vintage as starting really maybe 48, maybe 33, somewhere in there. And before that, I consider pre-war.
Yeah, I mean you can call the 1940s decade the scarcity era
Yeah.
because of the war there were so few sets made and there were gaps. You know, that's
Yeah.
why when you get into the 48 Bowman or the 49 Leaf, like collectors had to wait a long time till a product came out like that.
Absolutely. Ruben says, let's call it retro vintage era for the 80s and 90s.
There
Retro
you go.
vintage.
That works.
I like
I
that.
don't.
That has a nice ring to it.
Um, oh, this is interesting. TJ says, breaking news, not to change the topic, but now there's news coming out about another Dallas show robbery. That is an
Oh
absolute
no.
shame if that's true. Um,
Well, Mike was there yesterday, and I think Chris from Missouri and all these guys are there today.
are you pointing fingers, Orlando?
No, I'm just saying, maybe I'm going to text these guys, see if they know anything. Get some information.
You know what's sad? Somebody was texting me this morning, and he's going to a show, and he said his wife said to him, "Are you sure you're okay taking that much money?" And he said, "Yeah, it's safe or whatever." And she's like, "That's not what I heard about shows." So even like people's wives are hearing how that it's dangerous, and that's sad.
That is sad. It's Well, it speaks to the size of the shows. There are more large regional shows than ever in the hobby. It used to be, for all intents and purposes, more or less the national. You had a couple shows, and then it was a hotel ballroom.
Yeah,
And that was it. Now you have really decent sized shows year round around the country, and the amount of money on the floor of some of these shows in product and in cash is just way higher than I think it's ever been.
it's unbelievable to see the transition because shows were dead. You know,
Yep.
card shops were dead, shows were dead. Now they're booming. They're everywhere.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
right now, it's just the hobby's become more national news, and you see it more on the regular news and just big stories like all these things that are happening with the robberies and stuff. That's coming out and becoming, big, major news.
Yeah.
And I think we're
Well, I
getting a lot of attention, and, it's good and bad for the hobby. And sometimes, the downside is that. A lot of times they focus on all the bad stuff that's happening in the hobby, the fraud, the rip-offs, and those type of things. But I think really we've always had people doing this in the business. There's always been fraud. There's always been stealing and all that. I just think it's become in a bigger scale. Looks like some of these are more planned out, and it's just become more. There's more media out there. I mean, not just YouTube. It's just everywhere, all over the media.
I
I
don't want
think
to. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say the paradox today is the hobby is the best it's ever been, and it's the worst it's ever been at the same time.
I call the hobby high school all the time, because it's a bunch of people who got older, grew up. Some of us matured, some of us didn't, and there's always the kid who went to the principal's office, and it's a shame that this still goes on. How about something a little happier? Captain Copter says card collecting is based on sentiment, as it should be. If you're younger, you may have sentiment for 90s cards from your childhood, the players and era you grew up in. Absolutely could agree 100%. If there was a player you grew up loving as a kid, that you don't need to worry about what we call the era to enjoy it.
That's true.
We got Chris Carlin jumping in. We'll go quad box here.
There he is.
Guys, so sorry. I'm down at
No problem. What's going on,
baseball
Chris?
game, so I was having trouble getting on.
How are you doing?
Good.
I wanted to catch up with some stuff with you. I know you just went to the Upper Deck conference.
Yeah. So pretty cool that even though I'm in a new gig with PSA, we're still able to head out there and hang out with those guys. So I think it is one of the few conferences that is a little different than a normal trading card show or things along those lines. Upper Deck really focuses on trying to help the dealer understand what's going on in the market and how to be the best small business possible. So what they do is bring in experts on loss prevention and small business banking and things along those lines. So it's not just here's the new product, buy this, buy this, buy this. And it's pretty cool that there were every year that they've done it. I think it started off with about 150 shops and then 200 shops and then 250. Well, they're up to 350 shops now that are coming to this thing. So it felt a little tight, but it felt great to see dealers from literally all over the world. I saw Michael Mu from Shanghai Reka in China. I saw Anders from Cool Card SE in Sweden, shops from the UK, a lot of them from Canada, and it was just a really good event. So was excited to be a part of that. And it's cool to see as well that even though Upper Deck is dealing with some of the situations that have come up from a very aggressive competitor and Fanatics in terms of grabbing licenses, they're still pivoting and producing some really compelling content. So their new Neopets game is kind of interesting, but what I'm really excited to see what they do with the license of DC, because there really hasn't been a manufacturer that really took that license super serious. And some of the product offerings, I collect a lot of Upper Deck's Marvel products. I think that their DC offerings are going to be very solid.
All right, Chris, I want to follow up with some other stuff that I know you put in the chat. John and Orlando, you guys are the best. You absolutely helped me save today's show, and we're going to get in the whole hour. So I'll let you guys go. Thank you. Enjoy your days. And Chris and I will.
Thanks, guys.
We'll take it
Take
home
care,
from
guys.
here.
Thanks.
See
See
you
ya.
later.
Thanks.
Anyway, so I also wanted to give you a couple minutes before we run out of time. I know that you wanted to talk about somebody who is close to you, in Jack Hoffman, and I want to give you a minute to talk about that. Talk about him.
Yeah. Early in my marketing career, I got a piece of advice: do the right thing and let the brand go along for the ride. And when I saw Jack Hoffman, this 7-year-old with pediatric brain cancer, getting into a Nebraska spring game and running a touchdown, it was so moving and so pure and what sports is supposed to be. Um, and I knew that it would empower my brand if I could use that power of Upper Deck to help tell this story and create a collectible for this young man. So how the card came to be is pretty incredible, because photography is so critical in sports, and not a lot of people even knew that Jack was going to be coming in to do this touchdown. The family didn't even know until the Friday before the game, and they just kind of put together what they had. Uh, Jack's uncle played for Nebraska, and they had some of his pants, and he was a smaller guy, so they used his pants, and then he had an autographed Rex Burkhead jersey, so that's what he wore out there, and then he had this little Franklin plastic helmet that was almost more of a keepsake than something you would actually wear in a game. And when he was getting dressed, the Nebraska football team made a circle around him and made that his locker room on the sideline so Jack could get dressed in his gear. Uh, but the real kicker was the image was taken by his father that we
Oh,
used for the trading card. And imagine being a dad in that moment with 80,000 fans screaming, all for the same team, watching your son do this remarkable thing and being able to have the wherewithal to snap a good photo. Um, so, yeah, Jack's cause is one that's near and dear to me, but it really served as a way for me to change the way that at Upper Deck we marketed goodwill programs. And so after creating Jack's card and raising several $100,000 for the cause, we looked at what else could we do to help young athletes, inspiring people. So we created a program called Heroic Inspirations. And I think there are about 20 cards that we did before I had left. If you go to Upper Deck's headquarters, they have something called the Wall of Inspiration, which is really cool. It shows all those kids. But seeing Jack pass this week was really tough because he was in remission and his cancer was supposed to be gone in many cases, we thought, and unfortunately it came back very aggressively and took my friend. So very tough to hear. Prayers and thoughts to the Hoffman family, but it just goes to show you that um, cancer is a tricky one, and it has no remorse and uh, comes hard and fast, and it's it's just tough to beat. So prayers to Jack and his family.
absolutely. May his memory be a blessing. My wife is a survivor, and I say proudly F cancer. So, moving
Yeah,
on from there,
yeah,
the PSA world.
yeah.
I got to hit you with this week's news. You guys evidently, when things are on fire, people want to ship to vaults and send a lot of stuff in,
Oh man, yeah.
and
Really
I think
tough.
there's a natural connection there between people being scared and wanting the feeling of their stuff in a vault. What do you think, and what's going on, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, watching the wildfires this week. Well, I've been in this a while, and I've seen people lose their collections to floods. I've seen them lose it to theft. I've seen them lose it to tornadoes and hurricanes. But the fire was crazy because it really hit a residential area, an affluent residential area. And I saw some people who had literally lost their entire collections. And as a collector, it's so sad to see because we know how hard it is to put together collections and that we put our heart and soul into them. So whatever you get back from an insurance agency isn't going to be company isn't going to be what you really put into it. So I mean, there it does make you think that it is important to have your cards graded because if you don't, the insurance company will give you usually that lower value.
Yep.
Whereas if you could say, hey, I had a PSA 5 of this, a PSA 7 of this, a PSA 10 of that, there's market values that go right along with that. So recovery is a little bit better, and getting a max payout is a little bit better. But really, where I was blown away this week was the vaulting and seeing a 500-pound fireproof safe literally melted because those fireproof safes are really designed to last for a couple hours until the flames are extinguished. If it's a fire that is burning out of control, whatever's in there is going to get cooked. The safe becomes an oven, and it's heartbreaking to see. Like you think you did the right thing, you invested in this to keep your collection safe. Really made me realize the importance of vaulting services. So um, and quite frankly, I'm not just trying to pimp the PSA vault. Like I think you need to keep your collection in different places. You should not have it all in the same place. Keep a little bit here, a little bit there. For me, it's hard to put everything in there because I like to look at my cards. I even wear my cards sometimes on a necklace. So I keep the fun ones with me, but the rest, it makes a lot of sense to store in a vault like the PSA vault, because you do have the freedom to get it out at some point. You could sell if you like, and there's going to be more functionality added as well to make it even more engaging. So, yeah, it's a pretty compelling reason to vault your cards, even though you love to hold them in your hands. It's you still can see them and access them. It's just the safer play.
Yeah, when I heard that the mailroom was actually the backup at PSA, it made perfect sense. And I was so glad that in the explanation they actually said it was the mailroom, because that it makes total and complete sense. So glad that hopefully everybody in the California and LA area is safe, and that's the lives are far more important. But for the collections and the mementos, and like you said, the sentimentality of things we spend our life putting together, whether it's collections or photos or whatever it is, the money never equals the memories. So
That's right. Yeah.
absolutely. All right, well, Chris, I know it's a short one with you today, but I'm glad you
Yeah, my
jumped on.
apologies again. I've got to get off to the baseball game now, but appreciate talking with you for a little bit, Danny. You're the best.
No, absolutely. I appreciate it, and good seeing you. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.
Take care. All right, guys. So we're gonna wrap it up and take this show home. I appreciate everybody who jumped on. A big shout out to Orlando. Um, Definitely a national treasure. John Mangini, Chris Harris, Chris Carlin. Ended up being a lot of guests today, so it was an absolute pleasure. Hobby Hotline, episode 328. I think we're gonna call it a day, guys. Appreciate everyone. Have a wonderful holiday weekend. Um, Thank you very much, Gordon. Everybody, enjoy yourselves this weekend. Definitely have some fun. Talk to you later. Take care.